All right, welcome, guys. We got another episode. Um, Getting into some interesting stuff around the league. Talk about the Oilers, the Maple Leafs, as usual. Such a polarizing team and such a great topic for any episode. And then we'll get into some of the trades that we will make at the deadline for the Panthers. But let's start off with Patrick Kane. Um, there's been a lot of word on. There's been some reports, some legitimate stuff on the Panthers being in on Kane and how Cito has been very aggressive in pursuing him. And I think the idea there, based on reports, is just to bring him in to play with Barkov, um, and kind of just fill in that top six nicely. I don't know if Reinhardt will go down to the third line if that happens, or what, you know, how it's gonna snowfall from there. But how do you feel about Patrick Kane in general coming to the Panthers, and why would it be a good move? Why wouldn't it be a good move?
Yeah, for me, there are not many guys out there outside of a trade that would you have to sacrifice something um, to get that could help with scoring and skill. Kane, reports say that he's feeling good after the hip surgery, that it's not as bad as the Backstrom's was or whatever. So there's more of a chance that he'll look good. He had a decent season last year and he was really hurt. He said that he was basically playing on one leg. And he was a point per game in the playoffs for the Rangers. So, he's a guy who's going to produce. He just turned 35. There's a bunch of guys in the league now that at 35, 36 were still putting up points. 2 seasons ago, he was a 92-point guy. He's a liability on defense, but that's okay because he can give you in the power play, for instance. Like our power play can look a lot better with him out there. He's just a smart player. So I think Cito probably. I'll say this: if we get him, I think he's going to probably try to play him with Barkov and Reinhardt on the first line because that would be like a legit first line. And then he'll move Rodriguez back to the third line permanently with Lusty and Lundell, maybe. So that would be something I could see him trying. I don't know that he'll do Kane, Barkov, and Rodriguez, or maybe Verhage, but then now you have two wingers who are not great defenders. So I think that would be the right balance to have Reinhardt with Barkov and Kane and figure it out with it. That means Reinhardt moves to the left. But to me, that's probably what the goal is. I think Kane only makes sense, obviously, if it's cheap because we cannot afford him. Otherwise, we will have to trade a really good forward, and it doesn't make any sense. If ideally for 1 year, just for this year, because I don't know that he will fit our team next season. The only way that Cito will probably give him a 2 to 3 year deal is if he's taking like 2.5, or something cheap like that, which I don't think from the reports that Kane wants that. I think Kane wants a little bit more money. So it will come down to a few things. Like he lives in Buffalo, so that's home. He could go to Buffalo, he could go to Detroit, which is closer. And the travel won't be as bad on the East Coast if it's up there, since so many teams are in the Northeast. But it's very cold, and supposedly the warm weather is really good for the hip. And he wants to contend. And quite frankly, the Red Wings and Buffalo, I don't think are necessarily contenders right now. And who knows next season. And those are teams that they're not great defensive teams. So I think the Florida's the best fit. Like they can put him on the first line, they can put him on the third line. He'll play on PB1. They can hide him a bit. The warm weather, all that, and then the playoff run, he can really contribute. We've needed a high-end talent like that in the playoffs before. So I can see him as a fit, but if he wants the money or if he wants a term and we cannot do that, I'm okay moving on and then going to a trade in the deadline or before the deadline to try to improve our top nine, because I do think we need another winger who can score. But that's where I'm at with Kane. I don't hate it, but I hope we don't overdo it. I hope Cito doesn't, because it is risky with the hip. He could all of a sudden become Backstrom and not play or not produce at the level you need him to. So anyway, I'm hopeful, if we can get him for a cheap price, at least for the year, if he wants to do that, quote unquote, prove a deal with the Panthers and try to contend and win. And then we'll see and take it from there. But I'm not like dying to get him either. Like if we don't get him, if he goes elsewhere, I won't care that much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think any one player is gonna change a franchise. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but at this point in his career, he's turned 35. I don't think he's gonna come in and like go off. He's gonna improve the offense, but that's about it. And there's always that question of health, like you mentioned. So it's yeah, it's not too risky if you're paying him like 2.5 for this year, and maybe he agrees to sign an extension somewhere else or beyond this year. But yeah, it wouldn't make sense to spend like 4, 5, 6 mil on him right now for 2, 3 years, not knowing what you're gonna get. So I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, I don't really care that much if he comes on. I do think it'll improve the team, and the lines will be a bit better balanced, and hopefully, top line has already been good, but now you can kind of move Reinhardt or Rodriguez or whatever and kind of strengthen your third line and your second line. So yeah,
And I think press wise, it's a good thing that we're front runners and that we're in the news, and that somebody like of Kane's level and pedigree is interested in coming to Florida potentially. That says a lot for free agents going forward in the future. And if he does take a cheap deal to come here, even if we don't win, like that's a good thing for us, man, because we do need to be respected. To attract players, you need to have a balance of, the location, the play, and all that. But you also need a reputation that you're a contender and the guys want to come here. Because even if you come as a free agent, you know that the team's going to continue to build, and you're not going to be on a bad team all of a sudden. And that's why I like about OEL, because OEL came for a cheap contract, and he's having a really good year for what he's getting paid, putting up points and all that stuff. So anyway, those kinds of signings and guys that can come here and produce on who are big names, that just helps our franchise, to be honest. So even just being in the news with Kane actually is a good thing for the Panthers. I think more guys might want to get traded here or sign here. So anyway, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, and Elliot Friedman also mentioned that the I forgot the wording, but basically the vibe that he got is that Cito is looking to make a big splash in the offseason, regardless of what he does now. He's going to be looking to get a top level forward. Whether it's a signing or a trade, everything's kind of pointing to a trade, but obviously if it's a trade, he'll have to pull the trigger sooner.
I think he can package Verhaeghe and Edblad for something.
Well, but Verhaeghe and Bennett still have all of next season as well, so you can always trade.
That ups the value. That ups the value because a team that gets him has the year at a cheap value for both. Even Edblad at 7.5. If you know what the fixed rate is for the guy for the whole year, it gives you a year to re-sign them, so you can work on that, and you're getting them cheap. That's what happened with Uyghur and Huberdeau. Right? Like, that's why they were a fit, even though like Cito didn't want to do those extensions, but other teams might want to or need to, right? And you need those kinds of players. So there could be a Chicago, like, Chicago is like one in England or whatever, like Nylander's probably going back to leave. So if they need a legit scorer on the left, like maybe bring Verhaeghe in, or if you need a defenseman for your top four at 7.5 for a year and a guy that maybe you can resign, Ekblad has been a number one before. So anyway, like you could trade both of those guys for like a legit top liner. Or if you want to just get picks and then turn those picks into guys. I keep telling you, like Konechny's out there, like there's certain players that we can try to go after. If the Senators are out of it by the deadline, Tarasenko might be an option to get for the playoffs. And then at that point you might need to, trade him for Verhaeghe. But anyway, I do think Cito might make one big trade. And we'll talk about that for the deadline for this year, because I'm curious what you think about if Kane doesn't work out. Because I think if Kane comes here, I don't think we'll make a lot of trades. I think that's going to be kind of our team to for the rest of the season. But if he doesn't come, I do think we need to make something happen. So I'm curious, like, what you would like to see happen.
Yeah, I think we're okay on defense. I think Montour will get better. Ekblad, they're both a little off out there. You can see it with their decision making and their passing and stuff. It's not typical of Montour, but so I think on the defense we're fine. I wish we could do something about the goaltending situation this year, and we won't be able to. but that would be like my number one move. I would trade Bob at the deadline, but we can't do that. So anyway, no, I think a lot of what we talked about in the past and what you said about finding a playmaker that can also score for the Panthers is huge. Right now, we don't have that almost at all. Barkov can give you that a little bit, but then he just makes the extra pass, or he's just not going to give you a ton of scoring. And I think that's what we need to go after. My only worry with that always is, what do you give up? And do you give it up now? Like, do you give up Reinhardt at the deadline to get a guy that's going to give you the same amount of points? That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So you definitely need to package something together. Maybe one or two defensemen, or one defenseman, one forward, and a pick, or one of the kids. You're going to have to do something like that, especially if you wait at the deadline where everything's just way pricier. So I think, knowing Cito and how he's kind of handled it the last 2 years, I think he kind of learned not to overdo it, or maybe not do anything at all either. So I expect him to trade, let's say Cousins and Mahura or Balinskis for a pick or something like that, and flip that, and just go after, like you mentioned, Tarasenko or someone like that might be available. It depends on who's available, obviously. And just kind of do that and see how that goes. But I think that Zito knows that this is kind of a 3 to 5 year project, mainly because of all that you've talked about with the cap and Bob's contract, Ekblad's contract. Our two goaltenders, but Ekblad is like 21 mil, 22. That's a lot. That's a lot for two goaltenders and a defenseman that's injured half the season. So yeah, I think that just getting some scoring will be just fine, and finally being able to fill those top two lines. Like, that's my biggest thing. And it's when you think about Bennett and Verhaeghe and players like that, like they're kind of in between a second and a third liner. But if that's like our top guys, if that's what we are relying on, it's not going to work. We're going to have a lot of grit in the playoffs. We're going to make it tough for whoever we play against. But we don't have the scoring to win a cup, or to even get back to the cup. I think last year was very, very fluky to get to the finals.
Yeah. I think strategically you just have to be smart about how you go about it. Like, Reinhardt only gets traded if he hasn't signed by the deadline, and Cito has had the conversations and they know that they're far apart. And so if you're going to lose him for nothing, maybe you flip him now that he's having a good season, and you try to get as much back as possible. Otherwise, you keep him for the run. You see if you can do something. You don't need to win a cup this year, but if you can get to a second or third round again, that can help your franchise a lot too, because you can set up for trades and things next year. Even Bob having a good playoffs again would help trade him in the offseason, because he only has 2 years left. You can retain like 40%, put a sweetener, draft or a prospect, draft pick or a prospect. Maybe somebody with a cap going up will take him for $6 million. For only 2 seasons, he can still be a starter. There are teams out there that could use a goalie like that, and $6 million won't be as terrible, in the next two years. So there are ways that we can make that happen. It was harder to trade him before because the cap was really tight. Nobody even retaining, guys wouldn't want to take him, and he had too many years left. And nobody had seen what he did in the playoffs last year, which helps. So anyway, I think. For me, I don't think we'll make a splash by the deadline unless Reinhardt is not resigning, or, Forsling is not resigning, or a guy like that we just have to move to not lose him for nothing. But what I see more likely happening if Kane doesn't come, because if Kane comes, then I think they're going to have to let go of some guys, whether that's Gadjevich, Cousins, or Lawrence. There's just not enough space for everybody. And also the money, to make the money work. And we'll have 8 defensemen. I don't know if Mahura sticks around till the end of the season. I think he's a young defenseman who played a full season and has good defensive numbers. So you could probably flip him for some. And I don't know that he's going to get a ton of playing time, because OEL now took a spot. And you're not going to move OEL from that left side. And Kulikov, if OEL gets injured, can play on the left side. So I think that's where Mahura might be the odd man out. We'll see. maybe it's him or Kulikov, but Mahura does not play on the right. And last year, Maurice did not want to play him on the right when Gudas got injured. So he might just be the guy that you trade. And I also see Cousins getting traded. He's expiring contract. He's getting less ice time than last year. He is a minus player. He's not been great. I think I can see both him and Mahura being traded with a pick for a third liner. And that's the one thing I like to see. I've been telling you names like Ryan Donato, Yamamoto in Seattle, Dylan Dubé in Calgary. These teams that might be willing to make a trade for like those kinds of guys who are not getting a ton of playing time, but that have scored in the past and have skill and can fit with Lundell and Lusty. There's some of those third liners that I think are much better than Cousins, who's never been a third liner, and it's not. Whereas those names I just mentioned and a few others are definitely third liners and have scored like 18, 20 goals in the past and stuff. So, and they don't make a lot of money and they have expiring contracts. So their teams might be willing to move them for something. Maybe it is a Mahura plus a pick or whatever it is that they need. So we'll have to see, man. But I think a third liner. We just need a top 9 scorer. If it's not Kane, then we need somebody else. And yeah, we just have to ride this team this year. Hope that our grit gets us to a second or third round. I don't expect us to win a cup. Too many things will have to go right, but then set us up for a bigger splash for next season, and then the younger players and skill, and maybe you have another window with a refreshed lineup that has more skill to actually try to, and then a veteran core of great guys that have been through it. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm hoping to see. I just want to have another scorer, another winger, and wait for the big trades in the off season. And hopefully re-sign Reinhardt and Montour, maybe Forsling before the deadline. That would be ideal. If the numbers are not insane, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be anything crazy. I think the tough part is just finding like a trade partner that it's tricky because if you're a team that's trying to rebuild, like the Sharks, you're not going to give up anything. I mean, you're trying to get prospects and stuff like that, so maybe you trade for a vet there, but they don't really have anyone, I don't think. The Oilers are the ones to kind of keep an eye on, but they're not going to trade those top 2 guys. That would be kind of insane. The Flames, I guess, would be the Flames and Seattle will be the 2 teams, like you mentioned, Yamamoto and Seattle. Maybe the Predators, if they're looking to kind of strengthen, their defense. I think that's the toughest part, just finding a trade partner and getting the right guy. I think that's why it's easier to kind of just do free agents. And
no, but those guys I mentioned are definitely tradable. I mean, these are teams that are struggling and probably at a certain point in the season are going to want to make moves, unless they're going to re-sign those guys. Like if you see the names I just mentioned re-signing, then yeah, Yamamoto got bought out and signed a 1-year deal. He's a rental in Seattle. He's not having a great season. Hasn't been a great fit, but he was a great fit in Edmonton. Just the money could. Basically, I think we just trade for a guy like that, or Dylan Dubé, who's on an expiring contract in Calgary and is getting reduced minutes. Donato is still in the contract for next year at $2 million, so maybe Blackhawks don't move him. But the Blackhawks are trying to build a roster long term, and they need more top end talent, and they got the cap space. So again, I don't think we can make a splash. I don't think this is the off season to make a splash unless Reinhardt or Montour or whoever decides, you know what, I want top money, and Cito says no, and then you just have to find a partner then and try to maximize your return. But other than that, I don't see why you couldn't get between a pick and a player like Mahura or even Cousins. Why you couldn't get like a third liner who's not getting a ton of minutes. The value is not that high. Most of those guys tend to go for like a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, maybe 3rd round pick if you're desperate and really need it. So if you throw in a young defenseman like Mahura and a 5th round pick, that can get you a third liner. So anyway, that's what I see happening. But again, maybe Kane is still, we'll see by the time this comes out. Kane should be announcing in the next few days. But if he does come here, then it will keep us engaged and interested and see how that works out.
Yeah, and I think while that goes on behind the scenes, we have 2 games, play Ottawa and then Toronto, I think. And it would be good to kind of straighten out a little bit and see what you really have with a full squad. Hopefully nobody else gets injured, and maybe if Kane doesn't come, that's fine. You have another like 4 weeks to see what the team does with what you have, and then you can kind of make a strong move if you feel the need. If you see that we're going to be kind of a wild card team once again, then yeah, you got to pull the trigger at the deadline, and kind of just strengthen your lines. And I don't know if they should just go top heavy or what at this point, but that third line just been I mean, we've had so many different third lines this year, but it's been really, really bad. And that's a big deal. Like the third line is almost like if your third line is great or is contributing, you're good. Your team is good. You don't need to rely on your first line every night. But yeah, let's move on to some of the games around the league. Kind of forgot about the Oilers after we beat them, but looked like they bounced back. They bounced back with a nice win. I think I mentioned Zito. Everybody's talking about Draisaitl and, what's going to happen in the offseason. He might demand a trade, etc. I don't know about that, but yeah, I think the Oilers this season has just been weird, and mainly I think maybe it's just because I've only really been like hyper focused the last 2 seasons, including this one, on the standings and things like that. But it's been very weird with the Oilers, and then the Leafs are very interesting to me. They're just one of those teams that kind of exist on their own bubble. Like they have their own league, their own way of looking at things, and they're kind of being run in such a strange way. I don't know if it's that Shanahan doesn't know what he's doing, or if they're just not on the same page. Like just some of the moves that Keeves has made with the new acquisitions and stuff like that doesn't really match with what Treliving was trying to do, I don't think. So I don't know how you see that situation progressing. I know we talked about them a lot, but I think it's worth talking about because he represents it's such a strange situation to have like 3 of the best, like 10 best forwards in the league and still like not be able to get to the through the playoffs. And if you really look at it on paper, last season in the playoffs, they should have gone to the finals. They had a really, really good team all the way through. Shari, Shen, O'Reilly, like these are really, I'm not going to say they're really good players, but these are really good complementary players. And O'Reilly's obviously a really good player with experience. So I'm curious to see how that progresses. Like they had a nice winning streak, which was like 2 or 3 overtime wins. Then they lost in overtime again. So they're kind of just like hanging in there, which is weird to say for a team that's supposed to be like winning the President's Trophy, according to every single analyst this offseason. Those are the 2 teams that I'm kind of like interested in seeing their projection and like how they handle their, I guess, tough times. It's something that we learned with Maurice last year, kind of going through those patch of games where you're not playing your best or the results aren't there. But even with them, I don't see the process. I don't see anything really working. And yeah, like Marner and Matthews were 2 of the worst players yesterday. And I guess beyond that, the Hurricanes and the Lightning. But I won't ramble on too long. If you want to say anything about the Leafs or the Oilers.
It's just team construction, man, in the system. Like with the Oilers, they let Draisaitl and McDavid do what they want, basically. And with their level of skill, you kind of understand that. But then you see a lack of a system. Their defense is terrible. I know their goaltending is being criticized, and they're not good goaltenders, but the defensive play is awful. It's just terrible. We've seen it with the Leafs this year. Like turning it over, the forwards not trying hard, making dumb mistakes. And we saw against the Oilers when we played them, like, McDavid just dances around the zone the whole time. Like, I mean, obviously he has that elite skating ability, but I don't know. There's a lot of turnovers that those guys make, and they're not defending as much. And I think because of their level of skill, and they're trying to promote that to the fans. Like we have these incredible players. I'm talking about the Leafs and the Oilers, they've prioritized the top heaviness and the skill level that they got through the draft with these guys because it's beautiful to see. But in the playoffs, it's a lot harder to go all the way without a defensive structure, without the goaltending, when teams are going to be more physical and maybe shut you down. Or even if you're getting yours, that might not be enough to push you through if the rest of the team isn't contributing. So I just don't see a good system in Edmonton. I think that the coaching staff and stuff, they didn't have the right, and the GM didn't build a balanced team. You should have had more better defenders out there, even if it's affordable guys who can defend the zone, maybe tall guys who can reach. We see the Jets, what great defensive system they have. You saw it yesterday. Like those guys are dialed in on defense. You see it with the Kings, how physical they play. You see it with Vegas, how physical they play. Any line that's out there, it's not going to be easy for you to score on. And that, it's like how you can try to build it. You see it with Tampa, how hard they play all through, even if it's just a bunch of guys that you don't recognize in the bottom six, that they still play hard. So I just don't see that there. And the Leafs is the same thing. They had their shot last season. I agree. They had a deep team. They had a balanced team. They have physicality. They have more defense, objectively better defense, more depth on the defensive end.
They were top 5 in power play and defense.
And defense, yeah, they were great. And then I think that they got outplayed by Tampa, and got through, and then lost in 5 to the Panthers. So this season they don't have as good a team, and even if they make some trades, they'll have to give some guys up. And so I don't know that they'll have as deep a team. So they'll need a lot of things to go their way to get far. But to me, it's just priority for those teams is the flashy scoring, which again, I don't think you use one of those guys. Like if you have one, if Matthews or Mike David, you build around them, but you build with like the Kachucks and the Barkovs and the Rodriguezes, like those guys around those guys are really, really good. Right. So, but they added Nylander and Marner and, Tavares, and they're paying top dollar. And outside of Riley, they don't have any other defenseman that really stands out. So the Oilers are the same way. They have a bunch of defensemen that can play the power play, but they can't defend for shit. So anyway, it's just team construction, man. So I think the balanced teams do better. The Carolinas, the Tampas, the Bruins, the Panthers, the Colorados also is a bit more balanced. So it's just kind of funny to see from the outside, and I think it's just catching up to them. Now the other teams are better, man, and that's just harder for them to win every night. Can't get away with a bad game and winning. Look at the Blackhawks. Like they had nobody, but they had Bedard, and they had like Dickinson had a hell of a game. And then you play the Red Wings, or you play, whoever, man. Montreal has a 500 record. Like the Coyotes are all of a sudden decent. Anaheim went on a little bit of a run. Like there's just not any gimmies out there anymore. Anybody can beat you on any given night. So anyway, look at the Devils struggling right now. Like they're not doing great because the competition's stiff, man. So anyway, to me, the Leafs and the Oilers are just like teams that need to look in the mirror and do a better construction. I don't buy the Draisaitl's going to leave, but those guys are not happy. I mean, that's clear. So it will be kind of drama for the off season to see what happens with them. And if the Leafs lose again in the playoffs in the first or second round, I think there's going to be a ton of drama again. So anyway.
I think the Leafs they'll probably, everybody's talking about if you re-sign Nylander, you're going to have to trade Marner. Even if you get rid of Tavares,
they won't trade Marner. They won't trade Marner. Like they won't trade any of those guys. Like you lose those trades no matter what, and they're not going to be willing to do that. I don't think unless Shanahan gets fired, like I don't think Shanahan is gonna allow that, because they do have amnesia, man. Like they all of a sudden they're like so excited about Nylander. Let's sign him. And I'm like, you guys wanted to blow up the 4 as soon as they lost to the Panthers, like, and now you kind of are terrified to do that, right? And you're dreaming of getting Zadorov, who's just another Luke Shen. Like it's just, that isn't just going to be the one that gets you over the top. So anyway, just funny to see. It's great drama to follow. I'll watch the Leafs tonight against the Penguins, see how that goes.
Yeah, Penguins are another strange team, right?
They're old and they're getting nothing from the bottom 6, kind of similar to the Panthers.
Yeah, and their power play. Their power play
has been awful. Yeah. I think we've been able to lock down certain teams and beat up on certain teams and just win some key games, and that's helped the Panthers. they've had a similar. I mean, they're way older, so that's another element. But I think they haven't had the kind of production they needed from some other people. They don't have as balanced of a team, and I think that's really worked against them. But we knew this. They were a bubble team. I think the Capitals have overachieved, but I think they're going to drop back down to being a 500 team at some point. So anyway, yeah, it's been Carolina too, man, and Jersey struggling. So it's been more parity in the league. So it makes every night fun. It makes every game more exciting because the top teams aren't just gonna, the last 2-3 seasons in the East, especially the top 8 teams, were pretty settled by December. And there was 1 or 2 wild card spots up for grabs. Now the East, if you look at the point totals, like we're still second. Like, it's a mess. Everybody's beating everybody. So, right now, 100 points for the Panthers, who, can finish you in the top 3 or 4 in the East. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, right now the Atlantic would have both wild card place spots, I believe. The Red Wings have won a couple in a row, and it's pretty much it's gonna be those 5 teams. I think Bruins, Panthers, the Leafs, and then you're gonna have Tampa hanging in there. I don't know if I still buy them as like these amazing contenders or anything like that, but man, when they need to do it, they get it done. But yeah, looking at the standings,
I think Tampa gets in. I think the Red Wings and Senators and Buffalo are still going to battle. I think the Red Wings have been the ones who started hot. I still think the Senators have a chance to push. I think the Buffalo can straighten things out a bit. I think Red Wings could drop. So I think those teams will be there. I think the Panthers are just hoping to stay with the Tampa and the Leafs. Like, don't go through too big of a funk and drop and compete with those other guys. So if we can stick in the top 3 or 4, I think we'll be okay. Just stay above water there. Try to avoid the wild card if you can. And then on the other side, it'll be pretty competitive now because the Rangers are top at Jersey and Carolina, and all those other teams are going to fight for it. So anyway, it's going to create drama all the way through the end of the season. I think it's good. I just hope that we don't have to be that team like the last 2 weeks. It's like praying that, counting the points. I'm hoping
I don't know. Like, I don't think so. If it really comes to that, then something's definitely
we will blow it up. If by the deadline we're all of a sudden we've dropped to a wild card spot, I think Cito will blow a couple of things up this year.
Yeah,
he won't stay pat like last year.
Yeah, no, you can't. Reinhardt, Montour alone. You either have to sign them or trade them at the deadline. I don't see any other way than just to let them walk away for free. Those are valuable players. You can get a first-round pick for both, most likely. So for Reinhardt, for sure. So yeah, the Senators are right there. They're fine. Obviously, they're bottom of the Atlantic, but they have 4 games in hand. They're +6. They're just kind of going through a funk, I guess. But they're a good offensive team. They just can't. They can't hang with teams right now for some reason. I think the Panthers are in good shape, man. Like you win one of the last 2 instead of losing both, and we're in even better shape.
No, it's fine. And Boston, we played solid. We just couldn't score. And yesterday, it's an anomaly. It's not normal. We got 2 practice days now this weekend, and then we'll go on the trip. And it's always hard to go on the road and go to Canada. But at the same time, the 3 teams we're playing, they have shaky defenses. So, maybe that's what we need to get going. And, even if we just try to go 1-1-1 or whatever, like come back home, try to straighten it out, I think we'll be okay. We just need a couple hard practice days, work on the PP again, get it going again. It's been a bit of a mess. So I think we can correct it. And if we becomes a bit of a slump, then I think that's when the conversation starts to happen about changes and what might happen. So we'll see.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up there. I think we talked about everyone for the most part. Hurricanes and Tampa, I think they'll be fine. I think maybe Tampa is a wildcard team this year, but it really depends on what Detroit and Toronto do. and the Panthers, obviously. But if Toronto, gets on a roll, which they could with their offense, then you could see Boston, the Panthers, and Toronto in the top three, and then by default, the Lightning will probably be down there just because they're a little behind, not that far. We're tied in points, but I can see them dropping some games with their defense and all that. Even though
and listen, it doesn't matter, bro, because at the end of the day, most guys who win the cup don't necessarily finish first in the regular season. So all you need to do is get in. That's Tampa's mantra. That's going to be Carolina's Panthers. Just get in and then hope that you're going to run. And any one of those teams is scary in the playoffs. Any one of those teams can win a series or two. So, it is going to be tough either way. So I think for us, just forget about the rest. Just try to get in, and if you can avoid the wild card, then even better. But that's where I'm at with it. Just just try to get in, and don't be like battling the last 2 months of the season. You know what I'm saying? Like try to manage, and then maybe the last week or two you can get a little bit of rest. And then not have guys get injured. Because that's also the wear and tear, like what gets you injured. And maybe avoid the Bruins in the first rounds because that would be a very physical series. They're going to beat you.
Yeah, no, we can't be the last wild card.
So we got to go against Tampa or against Leafs in the first round. Or somebody like
Tampa,
that.
Leafs, Toronto. Hopefully, that'll be a good matchup either way. And with Tampa, it's just you kind of expect them to lose that one.
I just want us to lose. I just want us to beat them. We need to slay the demon, slay the dragon.
Slay the dragon.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Mix my metaphors. It works. Anyway, yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens, and then we can talk next week again. We'll have 3 games, and the trip up north and the Leafs game and stuff to talk about. So it'll be fun, and maybe by then we got Kane news, so we'll be able to talk about that.
Yeah, this should be a big week for Kane. I think he's coming down to a decision basically this week. He's gonna be with a team probably by the end of the week.
Time now, he's gonna announce. I think, yeah, we'll know.
We'll know for sure by the time we record again, hopefully. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. We'll put out another couple of episodes next week and throughout the season. Please don't forget to subscribe. And just stay with us for the rest of the year. We'll catch you on the next one.